Before we start, a couple of reminders. Firstly, quite a lot of this session will be around meditation. Now, you can do this from lying or you can do it from sitting. So you decide how you would like to be. So you just get yourself comfortable in a position that you can keep for some time. And obviously, if you're going to stay sitting and you need to then come down to lying, that's absolutely fine. And the theme of the class, Calming Times of Chaos, we're going to start with a little bit of just centering and grounding and coming into ourselves. And then I'm going to do some talking through the meditations or guided meditations. And then we're going to go into a really nice yoga nidra practice that I found. And then at the end, obviously you can stay resting after the yoga nidra, but I'm going to give a summary of the tools that I have found very helpful for me going through a particular dilemma, which I'll talk about very briefly in a minute, because this is about you, not me, but I just want to share with you something so you know what I have found helpful in moving through quite a challenging situation. So the other thing I want to say is that I very much believe that the micro or us is reflected in the macro and vice versa. So we all know, of course, that there is a lot of turbulence out there in the world, and we can choose how much to engage in it or not. I personally try to not engage in it too much because I think it's bad for my mental health. But nevertheless, I think if you believe in energies and astrology and all that sort of thing, which actually I do, I think we're all being churned up at the moment, probably for a reason, so we can actually heal our dark stuff. But the idea of the class today is to give you some guidance and help through that. So equally, if you want to write anything down, if you find it helpful, that's fine too. So as I say, you don't need to keep looking at the screen, but just start by coming into a comfortable position, be that sitting or lying down. And if you see me reaching to the screen, that's me either letting people in or just looking at my notes. So just take this moment to welcome yourself and come into your body. And just observe how you're feeling. Now, I know I always say this, but it's always so important. We all need reminding, which is to try not to resist anything. So how is your mind? Maybe there are racing thoughts. That's okay. How is your body? Maybe you've got some difficult emotions that you can feel there, or maybe not. However you are is fine. Just see if you can observe your physical body, your feelings. And of course, I'm separating this out into mind, body, emotions, but all of this connects with each other. There's no separation really. But just observe everything and see if you can not just allow everything to be as it is, but to be kind to whatever your present moment experience is. And if every now and again you lose that connection with the present moment or your body, that's also okay. So one of our first tools is self-compassion, being kind to whatever your experience is, wherever you find yourself. And then we're going to start by looking at the breath. And before we do, I just want to say that I'm always talking about the need to regulate the nervous system. But even in a yoga class, it's really hard to go from, it's like we're going 0 to 60 and then trying to make ourselves come back to 0 again. I had a really useful analogy the other day, which is we can think of our nervous system. Most of us are slightly activated a lot of the time. We're in very slight chronic fight and flight, maybe freeze pattern. We can't just come out of it. So it's a bit like if you're driving along a motorway in 5th gear and then you've got to come off the motorway to slow down, you've got to move through the gears first. you can't just put the brakes on, because that would be dangerous. I'm not saying that what we're doing, that would be dangerous, but what I'm saying is that the yoga session is designed to slowly take you back through the gears, so that then we can begin to rest, then we can begin to calm down. We can't find that calm in times of chaos instantly. We have to apply certain tools. So just start by observing your breath without criticism, without judgments. And then if you're able to, breathe through the nose and begin to allow the breath to slow down, but don't force anything. And then to self-soothe or begin to regulate our nervous system, which is the very first thing we want to do if we are finding calm. I'm going to focus just on the out breath. This is the breath associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. And if you don't get this immediately, that's really fine. Do not beat yourself up about anything. We're just working towards this. So what we're aiming for is a longer, smooth out breath, slightly longer than the inhale. And we're breathing from the diaphragm if we can. And to remind us, one hand to the heart, one hand to the belly. If you like, you don't have to put the hands there, but I personally find this helpful for me too. And then you're breathing into the hand that's on the belly. So you just feel that comforting rise and fall of the belly as you breathe in, as you make a longer out breath. And then you can either leave your hands there or release them. And in a minute, we're going to go into a short meditation practice, but I just want to share with you what's been happening to me over the summer, not because I want you to feel sorry for me, because I'm certainly not a victim. I just want you to know how we can work towards empowerment and recovery with whatever's going on in our life. So I'll keep this brief. In the summer, somebody I trusted as a life partner, I found out was seeing somebody else while he was still with me. And I had to go to his house and collect all my stuff. And then he was kind of creating quite a lot of drama around me and the other woman. So a lot of trust was broken. A lot of emotions like anger came up, feeling of being betrayed. But very luckily, I'm a long-term yoga practitioner. So I've had quite a lot of tools to work with, one of which is to not deny and to allow those feelings to come up, but also to withdraw from any drama and not to keep going into the story of what happened or what might happen. So, and also to use boundaries. Now, the reason I'm telling this story is I think many of us here are empaths, and we can get into relationships with people who can take advantage of us because we're empaths. And part of our recovery journey is not about being less empathetic, and it's not about closing down the heart, and it's not about becoming distrustful, but it is about discernment and having boundaries and knowing when to say, no, enough is enough. So as I said at the beginning of the session, there's a lot of chaos in the external world. I imagine you might have a situation that you might be finding challenging at the moment. And even if you haven't, that's fine too. So what I'd like you to do now is just to bring to mind something that you are finding slightly challenging. Now, because we're working on Zoom, I ask you to not think of anything that's too traumatic, but maybe something that you are finding a little bit challenging. And it might be a situation, it might be to do with your health. It could be another person, it could be finance, whatever it is. I would like you just to think about what that is. And then we've done some of this work before, but we're going a bit deeper today. And I'd like you to now, as much as you're able to, come out of your head and the story and drop into your physical body. And this is really important because this is how we process emotions. Otherwise, they can remain stuck as trauma for years. So just feel that, how that is impacting you emotionally. If there's nothing there, that's also fine. For some of us, when we have something difficult, we shut down, we become disassociated, and to actually come back into feeling is quite hard. It's a big ask, and that's also fine. Everything is fine. Now, if you like, you can take your hands to any parts that you're feeling it. So typically, this might be around your heart or your belly, might even be around your jaw, your shoulders. So if you like, just acknowledge where you are feeling that. If you like, hold that. And then do your best to see this as a feeling with a texture or a vibration, maybe even a color. Focus on the physical sensation rather than the thought storm. And whenever you go back into the thought storm, come back as much as you can to the physical feeling. If it gets too much for you at any time, just bring yourself back to your safe resource, open your eyes and look around your space. Don't do anything that's too overwhelming. And now on the inhale, breathe in a sense of self-compassion and light to that place where you might be feeling something. So you're holding yourself with tenderness and acceptance. And the next bit of the meditation, you might like to, I am recording this. If you need to come back and do it again, it will be up on YouTube later. But the next bit of the meditation is to, and if you can't do this, it's fine, but just to acknowledge that quite often an emotional feeling has a message for you. So if you're feeling anxious or anger, that's actually not an emotion. It's usually covering something underneath it. And you might not be able to access that yet. But just ask, dialogue with the sensation. Do you have a message for me? And also see if there is a resonance to this feeling that might even go back a long way ago, maybe back even to childhood. So the question here is, and it's not a question that demands an answer, it's just something we call in yoga swadhyaya, self-inquiry. The question to ask yourself is, when have I felt like this before? Is there a time in my life, going back maybe in another relationship, time in childhood, when I've had this feeling before? Because actually these feelings are always creating scenarios because they're coming up to be healed. And while we distract or repress, they never get a chance to be seen. Keep yourself safe. So if you need to open your eyes, And that's somebody has messaged to say they are beginning to cry, which is such a release. Because when we cry, the tears have cortisol in them, and they are a way of releasing cortisol and stress from the stress response and releasing trauma. And I find this interesting because I'm somebody who finds it quite difficult to cry. And I'm hoping that that is a skill that comes to me as I keep up with my practice. So quite often, anxiety or anger cover emotions like abandonment, grief, shame, and that might not be something you want to get into today. You might prefer to work one-to-one with a yoga therapist or psychotherapist, but you can just begin to acknowledge that by staying present, we are just allowing our feelings to arise. We're staying present with them. We're bringing compassion to them. We're not pushing anything away. We're being kind to ourselves. And what I want to say here now is also it's really important to try not to believe our thoughts, because our thoughts constantly take us out of the present moment. They create stories. This should have happened, that should have happened. Why is it not like this? Or they might be fearful. So again, part of our inquiry in our yoga journey is to learn to not believe our thoughts, that they come and they go, they arise in awareness and then they fall away. And what is important for us is to not enter into drama as much as we're able to, because this is about calm in times of chaos. So we are not engaging with somebody else's drama. We are remaining still. So now within your meditation, I'd like you to see if you can find a sense of space, spaciousness. So that might be looking for spaces between the thoughts, or it might be looking for space in the breath. So after the exhalation, after that natural pause, just drop into that silence. Or it might just be being aware of space around you and where you are sitting and lying, there is spaciousness. So allow yourself, your awareness, to focus on a sense of space. We're going to go one stage more in the meditation, but before we do, we're going to do some grounding because that's also really important. So if you're sitting, just be aware of the sensation of your hips and your feet on your support. And if you're lying, bring your awareness to your back, the weight of your head. Feel yourself held by the earth. Especially be aware of around the tailbone. And then we're going to do a bit of optional chanting. Because actually, I think today is Earth Day, so it's quite relevant. So if you would like, we're going to chant 3 times Om Prithvi Namaha. Prithvi means the earth. And this is all about Muladhara chakra. And as you do this, and if you don't want to chant, you can just listen, just focus on the sensation around your feet and your tailbones. And again, just feel that you're connecting in with your body. So we'll do this as call and response. I will chant to you and then you chant back. Om Prithvi Namaha. Om Prithvi Namaha. Om Prithvi Namaha. Just let the resonance of the mantra wash over you. Focus on stillness, space, compassion, and feel that you, however you are sitting or lying, just feel the sense of the earth holding you safely. And now I'm going to invite you back to just the situation that you might be working with, if you are working with something. And I'm going to ask you to meditate around two very important yoga questions, actually, but questions for all of us. Again, this is Swadhyaya, the process of self-inquiry. So the first question is, what is this situation teaching me? Is there a lesson here? And I say this because when we are in a difficult situation, it's very tempting to point the finger. You shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't be doing this. Da, 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 da. But actually, we need to point the finger back to ourselves. And the first question for that is there a lesson here? And then the second really important question is there a pattern here that I keep repeating? So a pattern in Sanskrit is called a samskara. And I always remember one of my yoga teachers, Jessica Charles, saying that one of the purposes of yoga is to see our samskaras, to see our patterns. Because very often we keep recreating suffering over and over again until we see that we're actually creating it. And I'll just explain that with the example of myself, which I gave you earlier. It's so tempting for me to point the finger and say, he shouldn't have done that, he was a bad person. But actually, my pattern is I'm an empath. And in the past, I've had poor boundaries. And in the past, I have attracted narcissists into my life. And so I see that that's, because another question is, what is it that I'm attracting? Because we all have a resonance. And as we resonate, we attract people and circumstances into our lives. So we do have to take responsibility for that. And I don't mean we blame ourselves if somebody's done something wrong, but it's just we put a boundary down and we move away. We are survivors, not victims. So the question is, what is my pattern? What am I attracting into my life? Without blame, with compassion. And then while you sit or lie quietly, and before we go into our yoga nidra, I just want to say one more thing, which is, it's kind of yogic philosophy, but I just want to share it with you because I think it's helpful. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali shares information about something called the klesha. And the klesha are the things that cause us suffering. So I'm just going to explain, there's 5 of them, what the klesha are. So the first one is avidya, and that means I'm not in touch with my true nature. I'm not in touch with my inner light. I don't know who I am. Now, if that means nothing to you, that's fine. But as we become quieter in meditation or at the end of a yoga practice, we begin to see that there's a permanent sense of self. This is our light. This is our true self. And when we move away from that by becoming lost in drama and stories, we get out of touch with that. So it's about coming home to our true self. And then the other klesha, and actually I'm not going to give you the Sanskrit because that's too, what I could do, but I won't. So there's a sense of ego, which is I am. So if we say like, I am sad, I am angry, I am a victim, that means we're making an ego identity with a feeling. Rather, it's a feeling. So it's like, I have sadness, but it will pass. I have a sense of shame, but it will pass. So we're not making a strong ego identity with what is happening. The third klesha is desire or craving, because that can lead us away from our true self. The next one is aversion or hatred, because that can burn us up. And the last one is fear. And I'm always saying this, we want to do everything we can to stay away from things that make us fearful. We want to feed our senses with that which is nourishing. I believe there's almost a plot at the moment to try to make us fearful from the external world, which is why I do my best to protect my mental health and only focus on what is healing and nourishing. Now, at the end of the Yoga Nidra, I'm going to go through just a key point thing of what those tools are to help us to stay calm. But I invite you now just to take 5 slow, mindful breaths, focusing on the pause after the out breath. To stay in your body as much as you can in the present moment. And then when you're ready, please come down to a comfortable lying position. It can be on a bed or a sofa. And I'm going to stop the recording now and then record again with my camera off. So at the end of the Yoga Nidra, I'll put my camera back on. And incidentally, when I go through the key points, if anybody's got any questions, you're very welcome to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box before we close.